Hello, my name is Dr. Harvey N. Kranzler. I'm a child and adolescent and adult psychiatrist, and I'm going to be discussing with you today some thoughts about what I'm calling PQSD, post-quarantine stress disorder. This has been a difficult time for many people, and there have been issues that are worth looking at and learning from, what I'm calling red flags to be aware of and see if they indicate any need for further intervention, as well as a focus on the positives, the resilience in our families and in our children. I'm going to go through with you a number of things that it's worth being aware of, as well as some suggestions on how to handle the very interesting time that we're in now. Routine schedules, a sense of expectability and regularity is so important for kids. And when in the middle of March, relatively precipitously, the entire world in which our children live were upturned. All schools were closed. Inability to get together with friends, the inability to go to shuls or to have simchas was really quite stressful. There was the immediate, overwhelming reaction, and then the ongoing, almost chronic, low-grade sense of hunkering down at home, and really spending a lot of time. Sometimes it feels like too much time together with one's immediate family. And now the new stage, as the quarantine is slowly being lifted in different ways, in different places, in different manner. How to manage the stresses that are inevitable. Every family is different. Every age and stage has its own challenges. This has been a scary time for kids, and many of them have handled it with great aplomb and without any difficulties, and some have had issues that have emerged. One of the advantages of being quarantined together is we have so much time to observe our kids and to learn about their strengths, about their creativity, as well as their areas of weakness and their difficulties that sometimes we don't get to see because they're in school and or out of the house very often. So the issue is to learn from this time and to see if we can grow and help our kids overcome the challenges that this experience has evoked. One of the most important aspects of having all this time at home is the rather frequent sense of boredom. I once went to an hour and a half lecture on boredom. It was really quite interesting. And one of the things that I learned was that boredom is an emotion, a feeling that's evoked when the child, the adolescent, has the feeling that it's not their job to soothe themselves or develop an interest in something. It's someone else's job, the parent, caretaker, another sibling. Boredom comes from the term to bore a hole. It has a component of, well, what are you doing to make it more fun or more interesting? And what we really want to do is to help our kids learn how to make good choices and increase their curiosity, how to learn new things. And that often is very helpful in developing a skill of being able to fill one's time in a positive way. On the other hand, kids need downtime. They need time for themselves. They need time to chill. So finding that balance is really sometimes difficult. One of the suggestions that everyone is making during this time of quarantine, and it's a good suggestion generally, is to try to have a schedule. It's been wonderful for many kids who don't have to wake up so early to get out, to get to school, and they're doing their school either on phone or Zoom, so that they can have more sleep in the morning, and that's terrific. It's healthy. On the other hand, having a set time, both for going to sleep and for what we call sleep hygiene, which is a consistent process of winding down at night, time for going to sleep, and a set time for waking up in the morning, even if it's at a later time, is kind of important. One of the other things that we're looking for is changes in levels of irritability. Irritability is like fever. It can come from multiple etiologies, from many sources. But you want to observe during the quarantine and during this long period of time, have there been increased responses to relatively small triggers that have evoked strong reactions that are not commensurate with the situation. Some of the other things you want to be looking for is changes in mood, changes in anxiety level. Has there been an increase in being sad, down, withdrawn, spending time in the room alone? A certain amount is quite good, but too much withdrawal is a red flag. Changes in degree of anxiety. Many kids have symptoms of anxiety before this whole quarantine started, and the quarantine can either exacerbate and intensify certain anxieties, or in fact the opposite. It can calm some of them such as worries that are not as prevalent since they don't have to interact socially as much, and they can do their schoolwork on phone or Zoom, where if they're very fidgety or having great distractibility, as often happens with kids that have some degree of ADHD. The quarantine has actually been something that the kids have liked very much, because the demands are less, and the structure of the schoolwork has been significantly reduced. On the other hand, you have the opportunity to notice and to see where your child is struggling, both academically and in maintaining the ability to keep up with the even significantly less requirements of learning that have been manifest during this quarantine time. You want to look for changes in eating habits, changes in sleeping patterns. To a certain extent, many teenagers especially like staying up real late and getting up somewhat later in the morning, and to a certain extent that's great. On the other hand, as we said before, having a sleep schedule is not only good for during the quarantine, but to prepare for when there's a return to a stricter schedule and structure of school, whenever that's going to be. You want to be looking at any changes in ways of coping. Some kids have just taken to the quarantine without difficulty and have maintained their social interactions by all means, technological and phone. On the other hand, for some kids, this has been a really difficult time, and you want to take note of it. Kids who are on the spectrum, for whom routine and for whom really knowing what is going to happen is so important. This has been a very difficult time, and they're out of their very important schedule programs that are helpful in maintaining their need for structure and recognized dependable responses to any kind of stimuli. Kids who've had previous traumas, this can be a very difficult time in which the quarantine brings back both memories and intrusive thoughts or increased withdrawal. So you want to keep an eye on all of those things. For kids with separation anxiety, this has been wonderful. They haven't had to separate, but as the quarantine is lifting, they're going to be beginning to need to get back to going to school and staying in school, which for some of the younger kids is really quite difficult. The benefit, of course, of the quarantine is that you can observe and you can watch your kids and you can interact with your kids. And if you notice something, as the saying is, say something, talk to your spouse. Talk to your clinicians, talk to your Rav, talk to a wise person, talk to the therapists or child psychiatrists or whomever you work with, because you may be seeing things during this time that you haven't noticed before, and the most important thing is to learn from it and to take something good out of this quite difficult process. Um, I learned a wonderful lesson in creative, positive thinking from my Rebbe, Rabbi Moshe Wolfson, uh, who on a Simchas Torah morning, the Aron Kodesh in his shul jammed, and they couldn't open up the Aron Kodesh to take out the Sifrei Torah for dancing on Simchas Torah. So people were sent out in the community to see if they could borrow some Sifrei Torah. And of course, everyone was using their Sifrei Torah at that time. So they came back only with Puzzle Sefer Torahs. And Rabbi Wolfson said, "This is truly wonderful. All the Puzzle Sefer Torahs were so lonely, and they too wanted to take part and dance on Simchas Torah. And we have an opportunity to really bring joy and give something to the Apostle Sefer Torahs." I thought this was such a wonderful way of turning a potentially disastrous situation into not only a learning moment, but with great joy, as well as even a little bit of a twinkle of humor in it. And that's really sort of what we want to do. We want to focus on not only the difficulties in the kids, but also their resilience and their strengths, and bring it out. And by our listening and watching and talking with them in an honest way, we really can help them learn, because kids learn from observing how we manage the stress. This is a very stressful time. Financial stress, health stresses, worries about a myriad of things. And the way we manage it is some of the best ways of teaching kids how to manage stress. I heard from Madeleine Albright, who was a famous diplomat, that when she was a child during the bombing in London during World War II, when she had to be in the bunkers and during the bombing, it was her parents' calmness and sense of positivity that actually was so helpful to her. Yes, she was fully aware of how dangerous the situation was, but the way the parents handled it actually was what imprinted itself on her. And I think there's an important lesson there. Our kids need some degree of certainty, but they have to learn to live with uncertainty, and this time has sure given us lessons in uncertainty. Some of the important things I think also to be teaching our kids is the importance of exercise. There's good research that shows that exercise can be as valuable for mood, health, and general well-being as almost anything, including medication. So exercise in place, or finding creative ways to do exercise together as a family, put on some music and dance together, or setting up ways of making exercise fun. Likewise, learning something new, increasing curiosity. Um, this is an opportunity for kids to develop new skills, whether it's in music, um, whether it's taking up an instrument or learning any kind of skill. For instance, cooking, having the kids participate not only in their choices of food, but in the preparation of food, and learning a skill that is potentially very valuable in the future. And we also want to be teaching them in a very positive way that as the quarantine is lifting, that there is great importance in taking care not only of themselves, but actually caring about others by keeping social distancing, keeping masks on as much as possible, and frequent washing. This is quite difficult for kids and especially for adolescents, but is real important. And the way I think to frame this is to put it in terms of this is the way you're showing your concern about others. It's a variation on Lifnei Sevatakum, giving your seat to an elderly person, because as important as not catching the virus, even more important is not transmitting it to people who are older, who have potential vulnerabilities more so than the kids. And this can be turned into a wonderful lesson in giving and caring about others when sometimes kids and adolescents have a hard time with that, but it's really quite important. We don't know what's going to be. We don't know if there are going to be camps this summer. We don't know what's going to be open and when schools are going to be open, even for next year. But the most important thing is to transmit a sense of positive, both acceptance of what is, as well as planning for the future whenever this will pass, and we hope that it will be soon. So I'm going to wish you a wonderful summer, and hope that the red flags that you picked up during this time will be something that gives you an opportunity to reach out and help your kids grow, as well as to see their resilience and their great strengths, and have a renewed ability as a family and as a community of taking care of ourselves and taking care of others. So I wish you all a wonderful summer, and we're hoping that there will be as little need in the future for a return of this quarantine as possible. But if that happens, we'll manage that as well, even better. Take care.
Thank you very much for a fine presentation. This is Rabbi Dr. David Fox of Chai Lifeline's Crisis Intervention, Trauma, and Bereavement Department. Please feel free at any time to access our crisis hotline at 1-855-3-CRISIS, and you may also email us at crisis@chailifeline.org. Looking forward to providing you with another installment in our ongoing series entitled Going through it and growing through it.